Let's talk about kids and COVID, two things that very much don't go together, shouldn't go together. But don't worry, we were told from very early on in this pandemic that while we might have to worry, maybe, kids really don't. All the way back on August 5th, a guy who used to be president said, "This thing is going away. It will go away like things go away. My view is that schools should be open. If you look at children, children are almost, I would almost say definitely, but almost immune from this disease. So few, hard to believe. I don't know how you feel about it, but they have much stronger immune systems than we do somehow for this. They don't have a problem." So President Trump told us not to worry about it. And ever since then, the right has run with that, with people like Tucker Carlson doing rants about COVID masks being child abuse and encouraging his viewers to call the cops when they see kids wearing masks. But remember, Tucker Carlson doesn't like it when you get in his face in public. He just wants you to do it to other people. He also did a rant about how the COVID vaccine is dangerous for kids and big tech is lying to you about that. Let's see, he also said to children and the vast majority of young and middle-aged adults and the vast majority of teachers, the coronavirus poses virtually no threat. So look, that's not just kids don't have to worry. That's middle-aged adults and teachers who, in my experience, tend to be elderly. They don't have to worry about it either. And it wasn't just Tucker Carlson. Laura Ingraham also said that vaccinating kids against COVID-19 is disgusting. Well, I think that you probably know where I'm going with this. We had in the last week over 250,000 cases of COVID in children, the highest ever on record. It has skyrocketed during this most recent wave. And we're gonna get into, it gets even worse than just the cases. But Ben, I know you have kids. Yeah. How do you feel about this, about the way the right has message around COVID and what we're seeing now when it comes to kids and COVID?
John, I honestly think on a regular basis how we have to start calculating for irrational actors. Most of our social sciences say that we can make predictions based on rational actors. I think we have to make predictions based on people who are suspended with all sense of self-preservation for themselves, but also their children, because sending kids out into this pandemic and giving parents a false sense of security is leading to the deaths of not only children, but we saw in Miami-Dade County, 13 staffers, all of them African Americans, died of COVID-19. And so it's just really, it's kind of an absurd moment in American history, and that's putting it mildly.
Yeah, we're very used to in America that like public school teachers, it's like a joke that they'll never get paid despite doing a very difficult job. I was watching a Kindergarten Cop last week, and it's just constant jokes about how it's the most difficult job ever and they don't get paid. So that had become a joke. To then be totally cool with them dying, like I think back on the teachers I had. I would say mainly the most common thing was a 60-plus-year-old woman to not care if they die. And again, like they're not just saying kids are less likely to die of COVID, which is still true. It's not the only consideration, but it's still true. They're saying teachers don't have to worry about it. And you're totally right. Teachers have been dying. In Texas, there were a bunch of teachers that died and they just don't care. Like, why would we expect that they would care about public school teachers, especially public school teachers who are black? The idea that Tucker Carlson is like, he's just racked with guilt about the fact that they would die of COVID just seems so ridiculous to imagine.
Right, and that's the thing. It's not only do they not have any concern or regard for human life, they have no hesitation about profiting off of it, because a lot of these narratives are lucrative, right? A lot of the things that they promote, these conspiracy theories, they get a lot of clicks. And so they not only don't care, but they don't mind making money off of it.
Yeah, 100%. And so we showed you the cases, 250,000 kids in 1 week. Well, let's go beyond that. So nearly 30,000 kids went to the hospital for COVID in August, and pediatric hospitalizations driven by a record rise in coronavirus infections among kids have swelled across the country, overwhelming children's hospitals and intensive care units in states like Louisiana and Texas. So again, yes, they are better protected against COVID, but 30,000 went to the hospital. That's not good. And by the way, if the ICUs and all that get overwhelmed, that doesn't just mean that kids with COVID might not have ventilators waiting for them and the doctors the care that they need. It means that kids suffering from all sorts of other accidents also might not be able to access the care that they need. And we know what's causing this. It's vaccination rates. So when you compare, as they do in this chart, the 10 states that are most vaccinated and those who are least vaccinated, we're talking about adults being vaccinated here. There's a huge difference there, both for the adults and for the kids. The kids are still far less likely to go to hospitals than adults, but it's rising fast. And you can see there, based on that, the kid hospitalization rate is kind of close to the adult vaccinated hospitalization rate. So we're like basically taking away that advantage by not getting vaccinated. And during the summer surge that we're experiencing, the hospitalization rate was about 10 times higher in unvaccinated adolescents as those who've been vaccinated. We have like an 11-year-old in Texas got COVID just a few days after returning to in-person learning at school. She ended up on a ventilator with the doctor saying, or the mother saying, her lungs are going through hell. They've been doing breathing treatments on her every 4 hours, and then they suction her lungs out at the same time. An 11-year-old.
John, I just,
having her lungs suctioned.
And this is repeating itself across the country. I think the media has done, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, how protected we are from seeing some of the trauma that's happening, but this trauma is real. And can you just imagine being a parent and having had that sense of security be instilled into you by your political leaders, only to have your child have their lungs pumped? I really think our politicians need to take in consideration that they should not be so cavalier with the lives of the children of their constituents.
Yeah, and it would be one thing if now or before they had been saying, okay, we have to get kids back to school. It's just too important. Them not being there is dangerous or whatever. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna send them back to school, but we're gonna make it as safe as possible. You are not going to be working in school if you're not vaccinated. As soon as the kids can get vaccinated, we're gonna vaccinate them. We're gonna do small class sizes. We're gonna have everyone be masked. We're gonna keep them apart. We're gonna put in extra money for filtration equipment and all that stuff. Because yes, we have to have them back in school, but we're not monsters. We don't want them to die. Except of course, that hasn't been the strategy at all. Virtually every one of the right wingers that's pushing for kids to go back to school are also saying you shouldn't get vaccinated. You definitely shouldn't be required to wear masks. Just pack them in there and let COVID run rampant. As always, and it seems most egregious when you're talking about kids, it is indistinguishable from actively advocating on behalf of COVID, trying to create environments where it's most likely that it'll spread.
John, thank you for saying it so succinctly, because let's just cut to the chase. They are pro-COVID. These policies, I don't care if it's intentional or unintentional, of ignorance or malevolence. The results are the same. We are in the mu variant of COVID-19. They're gonna keep this foolish. And when I say they, I do very specifically mean Republican governors like Ron DeSantis in Florida, the governors in Alabama, Mississippi, Greg Abbott in Texas, and they're not alone, right? We have Democratic governors who are pushing kids back into school. But the thing is like by not requiring masks, by pushing against the vaccine, and by pushing even against social distancing, we have seen Republican governors actively enact policies that are pro-COVID.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And we can't focus on everyone that dies as a result of COVID, but we can point out that, and I just did like a casual Google search of the last week, basically. 2 kids in South Carolina died. One was 9 years old, one was 15 years old. In Mississippi, a baby died of COVID. That was the 7th child death so far in Mississippi. This week in Georgia, a 9-year-old died. There was a less than 12-year-old in LA County that died recently. But don't worry, all the people that you trust in media and politics tell you that it's never gonna affect them. And for the families of those kids that have died, it is a huge consolation that the rates of child death are lower. How does that work? Like, yeah, it is rare, and it is still worth doing something about. Like, but again, I remain so stupidly naive. Like I thought the kids stuff would get through to them. Like sure, they'll throw their lives away because they can't bear to have a bit of cloth on their face for a bit, but surely they won't let the kids be killed in school. And I guess I just forgot decades of school shootings and how completely apathetic the right has been about that. The pro-life party, which has never been able to even sufficiently pretend to care about kids getting gunned down. Yeah, they're really gonna care if some 9-year-old spends a month on a ventilator and then dies in a hospital. I don't know why I expected that. Any thoughts about this? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, man, I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. And I just want to send my thoughts out to the families that have lost those precious children. But I also really need America to understand that once they turn a blind eye to what happened to those children at Sandy Hook, we should have known that we had crossed the Rubicon a long time ago, and this was an inevitable outgrowth of the ignorance that is required to sustain this broken system.
Yeah. No, you're 100%. The fact that they didn't care, and that and tons of them still love the guy who made his entire career attacking the families. Like that was when the all mass shootings are false flags really sort of took off. That's what the movement is. By the way, apparently the president has signed an executive order to require all federal executive branch workers to be vaccinated, and expects that standard will be extended to employees of contractors that do business with the federal government. It is still not much, but I'm sure he'll be attacked as Mao for that. But we can go a lot further. We can expect teachers to be vaccinated. Like imagine going to school. There are places they don't even make people who work in nursing homes get vaccinated. We're an insane, self-destructive country.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.